Good morning, Mr. Patel. It's been a long time. How you doing? What's going on? Just let me put it on WhatsApp. Good morning, everybody, says Mr. Tarun. Thanks, I'm good. Still in awe of your consistency. So sweet of you. I have a news regarding that. I need to discuss something with you and the dear viewers of Thinkers Frequency. Just one second, I'll put it on WhatsApp. So yeah, WhatsApp is done. Let me put it on my second WhatsApp because we breached the 2000 people limit quite a while ago, so I had to make two, which always takes time. Let's go with this. Done. So WhatsApp is ready, LinkedIn is ready, and YouTube is ready. Perfect. We are very good now, right? So about the consistency, Mr. Patel and Mr. Tarun, we might not be able to do our. I mean, we are definitely not being. We'll definitely not be able to do our tomorrow's show for Sunday. But it's not a bad news. It's a good news because tomorrow I'm meeting Sanjeev Bichandani sir. You know, and I have to be at his place by 9 o'clock in the morning. So there's no chance in hell that I can do the show and then reach at 9 o'clock because we get free by 9:15, right? So that's a problem. Tomorrow 9:30, we will reach there by 9 and then set up everything. We are actually recording a conversation. We have an interview which we're doing with Sanjeev Bichandani sir. That's a very good thing. And about questions that are to be asked to him, we could talk about them. Now the question which I'm asking you and Mr. Tarun and everybody else is, what do we do about tomorrow's Thinkers Frequency? Do we do an evening show, or do we just give it a rest tomorrow itself? What do you think should be the right thing to do? Right, that is a question which I need an answer for. I don't want to break the streak, but obviously it's gonna be different if we do an evening show and so on and so forth. It might be a good experiment though, right? To actually have an evening show for once, like 90 episodes of morning, and then we do an evening show. And evening, Mr. Patil and Mr. Tarun. So perfect. What time should be good for the evening show? Can you guess? Can you tell me? Can you suggest me something? What time tomorrow for the evening show? 6 p.m. after 8:30, 9 p.m. prime time, says Mr. Amrit Raj. Let's try a prime time slot tomorrow. I've heard that prime time is the highest TRP zone. 9 p.m. is when most people are looking at their screens. While 6 p.m. is very tempting, 9 p.m. could be interesting. But 9 p.m. will essentially kill our social life. Because 9 p.m. is when all the action happens, essentially, the party action. 6 p.m., not really. So we can decide. Whatever you say, I'm gonna go with it. Mr. Patil, Mr. Raj, Mr. Tarun, Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Jindal, and all the regular viewers of Thinkers Frequency, you have all the say here. And I guess you can hear me. That's why you've been able to respond. So we should begin the show, right? We should begin the show. The show that we deserve. The show that we deserve. We deserve it. Bum 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 bum. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Thinker's Frequency. We are having such a good time. This is the peak of human civilization. We are working so hard, doing such good work for ourselves, our parents, our kids, our siblings, our husbands, our wives, our friends, everybody. Well, not other people's husbands and wives, I hope. And just when we thought things could get any better, like they couldn't possibly get any better, well, they just did. Call it divine intervention, folks, but things just got a whole lot better. Now we have Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. So let's continue with our journey of reading between the lines, things that are especially interesting and important in the world of business and finance. Let's go! Oh, but before we go, we gotta follow a tradition yet, right? You know the tradition? The sweet and sacred tradition of the simultaneous sip. We'll all sip something together and it'll bring us good luck, as it always does, without fail every day. And all you need for the simultaneous sip is a cup or mug, a glass, a tank, a chalice, a stein, a canteen jug, a flask, or a vessel of any kind. Pour it with your favorite liquid. Today I'm having, of course, what I always have, hot water with some black pepper in it. And here we go. Beautiful, sublime. Nice. You know what the simultaneous sip says, right? You know what it says? It says that you're not alone. It says that we are in this together. And that's such a beautiful thing to say. With that out of the way, let's begin. Mr. Tiwari says, evening show chain se sona hai to jaag jaye. And I think the things we discuss, they are going to make people sleep, right? But we yet are not sure of the time in the evening. Let's decide. Mr. Kavan Prajapati says, hi, would love to get a glance of what you're currently building. So I'm building an AI conversation tool which essentially is a connection engine. Whether you're looking at hiring people, whether you're looking at jobs, whether you're looking at finding friends, you could use our engine, our conversational agent to connect with people. So we believe that in the era of AI and conversational agents, the value of classified platforms and even social networking goes out of the window. People would rather have an agent finding the good people for them. So that's what we are building at kavisha.ai. I hope that clears it. So we will begin with something I wrote yesterday. So viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember that I wrote an analysis on how the ban on gaming might lead to some serious GDP flux in a good way, right? And in that analysis, I threw a lot of numbers. I did a proper number crunching, and I got that went viral. Essentially, the article went viral, and in that viral article, we got a lot of response, like hundreds of comments. Now we had already discussed this at Thinkers Frequency, but here's something that's very important. Okay, so I read a lot of comments, and some of them were fair, let's say questions, queries, you can call them whatever you want to call them, but some were just very hilariously out of depth. They were not smart questions, they were not good questions, and they were not good arguments. So here's the tool for you and for us all, which I learned from Scott Adams sir and also Elon Musk sir, and even Mr. Peter Thiel sir. Great respect. That what do you do when you are arguing? Okay, what do you do when you're essentially debating somebody? What do you do when you have a different point of view? What's the right way to talk when you are essentially looking at perspectives, right? What do you base your perspectives on? So I'll give you an example. Okay, let's pick you know now the first is not even a bad reading of the situation. The first is not even a bad argument, it's just factually wrong. So firstly, a big question, an FAQ, a frequently asked question, as far as that analysis was concerned, was that 1 lakh crore went to deposits, let's say the customer deposits. Why are you calling it dead money? Because according to your analysis, about 50% of it actually goes back to users as winnings and payouts, right? Now that is a factual question, and the answer to that factual question is that nobody really wins in a gambling play. You know, the unspoken rule says the house always wins. So people who win, you know, they essentially bulk up their winnings, and then they bet again, and then they win again, and they bet again until they finally lose. So that's a fact, right? That's what the betting industry runs on. So why you see 50% of payouts getting paid to people? It's because of churn, right? New people come, new people lose, new people win, new people lose. And apart from a very few exceptions, almost everybody just loses. The house always wins. That's the ethos on which gambling runs as an industry. Okay. Now, once I said that hey, the house always loses. Oh, sorry, the house always wins. Somebody said, "Do you have data to back it up?" Now, that is not a strong argument. You know, now you don't ask for data for something very very obvious. Okay. Now, again, an analogy is not the right way to think, which is the second part I'm coming to. But somebody says the sky is blue and you're like, do you have data to prove it? Right? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. Some things are too obvious, and a lot of people try to nitpick you and they try to sound intellectual by saying, hey, do you have data for that? That's really not a smart argument, right? Ask for data when it's necessary, but don't like distract the whole debate by asking for data unnecessarily when you know what happens, right? Both of us know that that's what the edict of you know gambling is, but you want to ask for data. Now another question is, so that is the first question, that what happens to the payout that is going to winners? Are they not cashing it out? Are they not spending it on consumption? No, they're not. That's not the trend line. Second is, uh, a lot of these companies also lead to consumption. Okay. Because they are paying AWS, they are paying rents, they are paying salaries. Now what these people don't realize is that that is an equal. Okay, that happens to every company, that happens to everything, right? Whenever you make a transaction, that person, other party pays rents, pays salaries, pays whatever, right? It's the amount that that company is holding is the question. Okay. So it's a very indirect transaction, and it is something that cannot be equated with a salary because everybody pays a salary, and you can't like count consumption number of times, like, oh, these guys pay salary, so those salaries will lead to, of course, that's given for everything. The difference between consumption and the multiplier effect is that when you buy a biscuit, of course the maker of the biscuit pays salaries, pays rent, it's procuring things to make that final biscuit. Then that biscuit comes to the retailer, wholesaler, then the retailer sells, he's also paying. So salaries don't make sense, right? Then there's a packaging unit, then there's a warehousing unit, then there's a logistic unit. So a lot of multiplier effects don't apply to a company which is just holding money. Okay. So when you talk about betting, the money comes to these players. These players pay on marketing, these players pay on servers, these players pay on salary and rent. That's it. That's for everybody. Everything else that the other products do, they don't happen with this betting play. The third is the analogy thinking. Now that is the most dangerous line of argument. Whenever somebody starts talking in analogies, just stop talking to that person, because analogies have a very big problem of uh, digressing from the original discussion. So let's say if people start, what about, right? Whataboutery. Now, whataboutery is never an argument, and whoever is engaging in whataboutery, just stop talking to that person. Okay. The problem with analogy thinking is that you have to start discussing that something else which is being put up as an analogy, and that derails the current discussion. So let's say if somebody says that, hey, alcohol should also be banned, or cigarettes should also be banned, because they are also sin industries, right? Now, alcohol, cigarettes, everything, they are very different conversations. And each conversation has its own set of nuances, right? Now, let's talk about alcohol. If somebody says alcohol should be banned, if gaming is banned, right? Very dangerous line of thinking, I'll tell you why. Alcohol should be banned, definitely it should be banned. The argument stopped, right? Let's say if the argument says alcohol should be banned, yeah, alcohol should be banned, but it's difficult to ban alcohol. And that leads to another discussion. Alcohol should be banned, yes, it should be banned, and it has worked out in places where it has been banned. Now that starts another line of discussion. Gujarat is a dry state, has been a dry state. Is it, does illegal alcohol flow in Gujarat? Of course. But is Gujarat a more prosperous city than state than, let's say, Bihar, which is very, very downtrodden because of the alcohol issue? Yes, it is. Now, why is Gujarat a more prosperous state than Bihar? Is it just alcohol, or is it more factors? Well, that's another conversation. Is Gujarat a more prosperous state because it's a port place? Because it's a gateway of India to the Western world, and it has always been exposed to higher trade volumes? Well, that's another case. But if it was exposed to higher trade volumes and the Western world, shouldn't the alcohol exposure been more in Gujarat than it is in Bihar? And hasn't that actually helped Gujarat becoming a better state by banning alcohol consumption legally? Well, that is another conversation. So you get my point. It is just derails the conversation into something else. And then you're talking about something which was very different from the original discussion, right? So analogies are dumb, analogies are stupid, analogies are not the right way to think. Never ever talk in analogies if you are to have a productive, constructive, intelligent discussion. Right? Now, a lot of dumb comments, but I'll read the one which is like extraordinarily dumb. It was just next level stupid. And I'll read it out to you. Now, this is a very good example of what happens with uh, analogy thinking. Okay, the analogy thinking. This guy, I shouldn't name him, right? I shouldn't name and shame people because that's not nice. We're not trying to do that. So let's obfuscate his, or let's say hide his identity. So by this same logic, again analogy, any profit made by any high margin digital company from consumers is dead money. Example, Google, Meta, Hotstar, Netflix subscription revenue directly goes to these company. If all subscriptions are banned, people can spend this money to buy physical goods, which would have multiplier effect of circulation. In fact, it can be extended to any high margin discretionary category. Ban iPhones, ban luxury cars, ban diamond jewelry, etc. Now, this person has worked in tech companies, and I'm like, yeah, don't name him, I didn't. But it's just extraordinary how he could come up with this, right? How he could come up with, let's say, comparing Google, comparing Netflix, comparing these companies, let's say comparing Google. Now, Google doesn't even take money from consumers. Google's business model is B2B. It's actually a B2B2C platform where it takes money from businesses and actually provides a free service to you know users. Now imagine where the conversation could go if this particular line of thought or if this particular line of discussion is engaged in. I'd be wasting time, and I don't think his time is valuable. So it's just extraordinarily dumb because everything is a different case. That's why the best way to argue, the best way to debate something is focus on first principles, focus on the discussion. Just stay away from analogies. Analogies are nice sometimes to make a point, to actually, help people understand something, like to kids. But analogies are pattern recognition at work, right? And pattern recognition is a lazy way of thinking. it essentially derails from the discussion. Now you imagine, right? If people start talking about the business model of Google, discretionary spend, diamond jewelry, like what are people talking, right? It's just extraordinary. So a very big tip: no analogy thinking, stick to the first principle, stay on the discussion, and talk about first principles, like how is this happening, what it can go, what now a good argument to the article, which was based on first principles, was that, hey, how are you so sure that every bit of money which is going to the deposits is gonna lead to consumption? How are you so sure that each buck, that 1 lakh crore, which you've said is like 0.6% of the consumption story, how can you be so sure that all of it is going to go into the consumption economy? How can you be so sure that it's a lot of it is not going to go in the domestic savings bit, right? Now that is an intelligent argument. That is totally fair. That is totally smart. It makes all the sense. And the truth is, we can assume that a lot of it is stolen from consumption economy, because that's what the pattern suggests. People actually stop eating because of you know when they're trying to bet, they put their savings on the line, they take loans from unofficial sources, they take bad loans from people to just bet, and that's the gambling addiction. But it's fair that not all of the money is going to go into consumption. However, even if you look at the consumption to domestic saving ratio, right, 60% of national GDP is based on consumption. And then there's a lot of facets to how to see domestic consumption and domestic saving as a ratio and proportion. Now that is an intelligent conversation. So you got to stick to that, and that could lead to some insights, beautiful insights, intelligent analysis, but never talk in analogies. Now I'm come to the comments. Mr. Patil says, can I ask one question? After 90 days, was ChatGPT used for the intro piece? What? No, 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 no. This intro, as I said, was half of it. The cup, a mug, a glass, a tank, a child. That's Scott Adams, sir. And the first one, the joke, is me. I'm a creative writer, right? I'm a filmy guy, so I don't, use ChatGPT for creative ideas. I have one question on that too. You had mentioned it would be better if that money goes into contributing sectors. I wanted to ask that, as far as GDP is considered, shouldn't be non-biased. Well, no, it has to be biased. You got to pick what you want, right? Otherwise, everything can get screwed, right? Because there's something called path of least resistance. Okay, the path of least resistance says that people will do what is the easiest thing to do and what's the most addictive thing to do, and that's why there's a lot of money in filth, right? Right, if you gave people an option and there was no, let's say, education, people will be watching a lot of pornography, right, which they do. But that pornography, if you just put it mainstream, right, if you put it on TV, and if you don't put some stops to it, pornography could be ubiquitous. So the country has to be biased, the GDP has to be biased in putting, you've got to invest more in, let's say, research and development in technology and business and finance and so on and so forth. You cannot be doing what you can be doing. So the next question, as long as transactions are happening, no, Mr. Patil. Which also reminds me of a very, important thing, which I might just be forgetting. Yeah, people also had an argument that this is not going to lead to anything productive. All the people who were engaging in this gambling legally will start engaging in illegal gambling. Now, I don't know if these people live in the same world, but they don't understand the path of least resistance principle, right? The path of least resistance principle is you do what is easiest to do, right? And most people do that. When you make it illegal, it sort of puts some deterrence on the action, right? Now, when Gujarat bans liquor, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any liquor sold in Gujarat. but of course the per capita consumption is gonna be lesser than a place where prohibition is happening. Now, again, that doesn't mean that prohibition is always a strategy. Mostly it doesn't work. But it's not possible that everybody who was doing illegal gambling starts going into legal gambling. I'm sorry, everybody who was doing illegal gambling goes into legal gambling, right? There's gonna be some shift, but it's gonna be less than 10% or something of that sort. Then if you could elaborate on how one sector's spending is beneficial for GDP more than it would be good. Now, I did that, I hope. Automotive sector, let's say. Let's say defense. If you're spending a lot of money on defense, you are actually creating manufacturing prowess. Because the nuts and bolts, right? If you're like actually making a plane or a drone, you have to build some sort of intelligence which is like nuts and bolts intelligence, right? It got to be bottom up because you can't import any sensitive part from outside, right? If you're making defense. So every technology that you invest on will have to be indigenous. And when it's indigenous, it's going to lead to so much of R&D, so much of high productive work, so much of productive engagement of a very, very large set of people that leads to better outcomes. Mr. Raj asks, hey, just thinking out loud, could the ban on real money gaming could also push demand that's slowing? Oh, that's what the article was for. Don't name him, says Mr. Tarun. I didn't. I think he used Llama for commenting. He didn't. It was a handwritten comment. Tushar Tiwari, Mr. Tiwari laughs. My cue is that personal unsecured credit has been on significant rise without it reflecting in real consumer demand. Unsecured lending has been a problem for the country. Recent UPI data also showed high concentrated on RMG apps, second only to EMIs. Your thoughts? Exactly. Exactly. Now, if it becomes illegal, obviously that doesn't play out, right? Now, how an illegal betting shop works is that they call people. They say, "Hey, you want to bet?" The person says, "Yes, I want to bet." Says, "Hey, this is the app. Let's say radhe.xyz. This is the website. You can start placing your bet. Whatever bets you want to place, we are sending a QR code of a UPI transaction. Make the UPI transaction, send us a screenshot, we'll verify, we'll place a bet on your behalf on this website, right? And then you track whatever is happening on that website. Once you want to take out your winnings, you message us. We'll withdraw from the website on your behalf, pay you money. That's how it happens. So isn't this a lot of friction? That's how these people, the illegal betting shops, have been able to mobilize like 3 to 4 crore, 5 crore, 10 crore in monthly deposit. But it's very hard, very, very hard to make all of this, right? So it's not easy. And obviously it's not going to lead to a shift of everybody who was doing legal betting to illegal betting. So that's just bad. Mr. Tiwari says, I have seen folks in college who borrow money for creating teams on Dream 11. Young age, no guidance. Very well said. Very well said. Right? If something is legal and then there's age discretion, a kid can use father's phone, right, for having Dream 11, and he's gonna drain the home supplies. I mean home money, but that cannot happen anymore. So a very good tool for us, which much smarter and much better people than us have, taught us very well, and a lot of books on philosophy and a lot of books on this have been teaching that don't talk in analogies. Pattern recognition is a stupid way to think. Pattern recognition is what LLMs do, right? This worked in that condition, so this will work in this condition. A worked for B, so C will work for D. No. So that was a pretty long explanation, but very important. Very important. Moving on. Today's happenings. Today is a very slow day for news. Not much going on apart from Russian attacks on Ukraine. And it seems like America, with Ukraine as proxy, has also, sort of stepped up on the attack front. They've blown some pipelines. They've started causing economic harm to Russia. Now, these pipelines were going to Hungary and another Eastern European country. Now, Hungary and this Eastern European country, they are dependent on Russian supplies for energy. Now they're saying that this could be a big problem, but this is a natural escalation of what's going to happen if Russia doesn't stop the war. And it seems like Russia isn't going to stop the war. It's not looking like that, which, by the way, sort of makes our my prediction go wrong, right? I had predicted that Indian arm twisting Russia by India, with India as a tool, arm twisting Russia by essentially making tariff levies on India is gonna make Russia stop the war much quickly, and Mr. Putin has all the reasons to stop the war. That's what I was hoping. That's what I was counting on, that Trump basically levying all the tariffs on India will essentially force Russia to relook the war situation. That is more or less uh, come out to be false, right? So that prediction didn't go as planned, unfortunately. But Russia has a long game here, and it's sad, but it is what it is. So it doesn't look now, given what we know, it doesn't look like Russia is essentially wanting to talk to Ukraine. And Ukraine is obviously a problem because Zelensky has said no to every demand which Russia had for peace agreements, right? Which is secession of some of its territory and so on and so forth. So the conflict stays, we go wrong. By the way, you know what Mr. Musk said, uh, which is what we've been talking about, which is what we've been saying, is most important. Mr. Musk said the only true test of intelligence is if you can predict the future. Does that ring a bell? Right? What have we been talking about? What's the time right now? It's 8:35. No, it's the time to look into the future, right? That's what we've been saying. And Mr. Musk says the only true test of intelligence and only true marker of intelligence is uh, if you can look into the future, if you can predict the future. So that's what we try doing here, and we prove to be very good every day. But sometimes we go wrong. And you know what? If you go wrong on big things, it doesn't matter if you go right on small things, does it? Because as Mr. Nassim Taleb says, the most economic value comes from big happenings of the world, right? So you've got to get them right. And let's move on. There's a lot of discussions on a World Leader Forum. This is an Economic Times event. Uh, Mr. Nitin Gadkari has said a few things. India on road to be a $5 trillion economy through world-class infrastructure. Now, he's been saying that. He said that we've brought down the logistics cost to 10% of the GDP. We're going to bring it down to 9% of the GDP because our roads are going to be the best in the world in 5 years. Well, that's quite a sell. And then he also said that Indian automotive is going to be the biggest in the world in 5 years. Now, that is totally off the rocker. Right now, there's US market, there's Chinese market. China is the biggest automotive market in the world. Then there's US, and then there's India. And Indian and Chinese automotive markets are like incomparable. India is at 4 million vehicles, 40 lakh cars per year. China is at 32.9 million vehicles. That is 33 crore cars. So 40 lakhs no, not 33, right? 32 million is 3.2 crore cars. So China is almost like 10 times that where India is. So this particular prediction, or let's say projection, or even ambition seems very, very wrong on the part of Mr. Nitin Gadkari. Huge respect, a lot of respect for him. Everything is great, but we pointed out a few factual errors in his last speech as well, right? That factual error, by the way, has been made again. He said Indian car market is worth 22 lakh crores and Chinese car market is worth 49 lakh crores. So he repeated the same figure from last time, which is wrong because that's not what it is, right? So we've discussed that, a lot of factual errors from Mr. Nitin Gadkari. unfortunately. But these things happen because he talks a lot in numbers, and sometimes you mess up numbers. So no, I'm not casting any aspersions. I love him, but this is just plain and simple wrong, right? A lot of things. Uh, then a lot of leaders have talked about different things that are happening in the economy. We've talked about GST rationalization, 5% going to zero, 28% to you know 18%, and so on and so forth. So people are rationalizing on the loss of GST which is going to happen, which is like 45,000 crores estimatedly. But the government says it's going to boost demand, it's going to boost consumption, which is going to lead to a lot of good things. And you know so that is a bit of a discussion which is going on. Speaking of discussions, Mr. Patil says Mr. Gadkari would need to focus on quality of roads in coming years. Oh, Mr. Patil, we discussed this actually. So he admitted in a very beautiful way why the quality of roads went down, right? So you remember that discussion which we had, a very deep discussion where he studied his entire interview with Economic Times. In that interview, he said that the quality of roads went down because I believed that the vendors that we had been working with, they had started cartelizing and they had started increasing the rates. So what I did was I started allowing smaller players, smaller builders to participate in those bids. Now those smaller builders and constructors, they essentially came in those bids, gave lower bids, won the bids, but it was essentially donkeys in a horse race and donkeys winning due to the lower prices, which led to a lot of problems as far as road quality is considered. So he's tried to fight cartelization even with cement companies, which turned out to be a problem, which he couldn't do. But this was the major problem. And then he also talked about using different materials and how they couldn't work. So he said to bring the cost down, we had bitumen, but the problem is that Indian roads have a drainage problem, and when water clogs, the whole material starts, the bauxite or whatever that material was, which was a replacement of the conventional material, starts breaking apart. So what we are going to do in that case is we are going to handle the drainage ourselves. So he admitted a few problems or strategic errors which led to serious fall in quality of roads. But he says that those errors have been fixed. So good on him to be so transparent, right? Mr. Patil says, yes, it was good of him to acknowledge the problem and also his mistakes, personal mistakes, right? So that's very, very rare, by the way. So that's why I appreciate him. But some numbers cannot be wrong. I guess, his fact checkers or the babus he's working with, they're not doing a good job. It's the job of the bureaucrats and the speechwriters to ensure that the data which the minister has isn't wrong, right? But probably either he's not listening to them or they're not working out. Which way is it gonna go? Who knows? Moving on. Yet again, the judiciary has flip-flopped, which was expected. Now, this particular thing, we got it right. We had made a prediction that the stray dogs order by Supreme Court is not gonna be implemented because it's impossible to implement, right? And I had said, if you remember, that are you saying that there's such an oversupply of shelters, of dog shelters, that you could just pick up all the dogs of Delhi, some 3 to 5 lakh dogs, and put them in shelters? Were we having such an oversupply of shelters, dog shelters in the city? The answer was, of course, no. We didn't have shelters, but the judge, whoever was that person, he just, gave a judgment out of his rear, and that didn't hold. So the three member bench said shifting stray dogs to shelters impossible to comply with. So now they're gonna pick them up and sterilize them, vaccinate them, and get them back to the city, which is, by the way, what they were supposed to do since time immemorial. So that's how it was always, right? So essentially, status quo is wanna go what's gonna happen, but what you can hope for is some better implementation of the status quo, because even though the city authorities are supposed to do this, they don't do it right. So maybe you're gonna have proper sterilization and vaccination drives for stray dogs, and they're gonna be back where they were. So one prediction right. Moving on. Japan likely to unveil a $68 billion FDI plan for India during PM's visit. So Japan is a very very big FDI investor. Japan has to invest a lot in FDI because Japanese economy itself is not has not been growing for like 20 years. The big crash happened in 1990, and since then the Japanese economy has barely not grown at all, right? So Japan engages in a lot of FDI, foreign investments, for outside growth, and that's what's actually happening. Japan is looking at $68 billion. Even though Japan has a very very good relationship with India, and we are blessed to have Japan as a very good trading partner. A lot of Japanese companies are doing very well in India. Honda, Maruti, of course. But Japanese FDI in total figures has been pretty low as far as India is considered. So, a few numbers. Japanese FDI in India has increased in recent years, but it remains small compared to Japan's total outward FDI. Outward FDI to India in 2022-2023 was $1.79 billion dollars and $3.1 billion dollars respectively, with 1.36 in 2024 to 2025. So very very small numbers, but $68 billion dollars, that's a lot of money, and once it comes, it's gonna be a very good news for the country, right? We need the FDI, and with our sovereign ratings becoming better, with our domestic consumption going up, with our regulations going off, because we are decriminalizing a lot of things, right? With our you know these things happening, we should be seeing a lot of FDI because investors feel comfortable. What really becomes a problem is the flip flop of legal, judiciary problems, right? That always proves to be a very big problem. Moving on. Indian students in US need to lie low. That's the directive, especially on social media, and as far as protests are considered. Activism is not being looked at favorably by American administration, of course. American administration has been really serious on curbing the activism and also DEI. So they've literally outlawed DEI, and all of these universities like Harvard and Columbia and all of these people are having to pay like 100 million, in some cases $1 billion to the government for whatever, to keep the federal funding on. So those cases have been going on, and now nobody wants to take that risk where Indian students just go and participate in like intifada and so on and so forth. So that's coming down, and Indian students are pretty scared, but still there is no slowdown as far as United States immigration to United States is considered, of rich Indians. So rich Indians finding every means necessary to escape India as always, which is primarily possibly one of the biggest problem this country has, right? It's a symptom, not exactly a problem. Like rich people moving out of India to settle abroad is a symptom of a problem. It's not really a cause, right? It's an effect, but it's a very bad effect, and it basically becomes a cause of a lot of problems in this country, because when a rich guy leaves the country, he takes away a lot of opportunities with him, right? Because he has a lot of spending power, he has a lot of consumption power, he has a lot of business and transactional part, that is basically spurring transactions. He could start a business, he could hire people, and so on and so forth. But those rich people, if they just move abroad, it's just zero for the country, right? Which is a very sad news. Some numbers: over 3 lakh 30,000 students, Indian students, enrolled in US universities currently. Indians comprise of 30% of overseas students in US. We have a lot of money, right? And all of these people are being advised to shut the hell up. Uh, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting says that we need to improve the cinema screen density. Now, this is very interesting. We've talked a lot about cinema and the need for people to save cinema, right? Now, the ministry says that it's almost hilarious that Indian screen density is very, very less as compared to, let's say, US and China. So, here's some number. The cinema density is India has less than 10,000 screens in total, with approximately 9,900 in operation. Okay, uh, Indian cinema screen density is at 6 per million people, compared to 125 in US and 30 in China. So 6 per million people, with 125 in US and 30 per China. Now, a person will be like, okay, this is bad, right? 6 against 30 per China. But then if you bring per capita income into equation, it starts making sense, right? Like China's per capita income is at what? About $20,000, $18,000, right? What is India's per capita income? Right? $3,000. That's a factor of 6, right? So what? Isn't it okay with China? Now, what is US per capita income? US per capita income is what? $80,000, right? Compared to, let's say, 3,000 for ease of calculation. What's the factor? 80 divided by 3, right? About 20, 25, right? So at this moment, if we have 6 screens per million people and they have 125, isn't it okay? Isn't it like fine? $2,800 versus $80,000, and but then somebody can come up with saying like, oh, why don't you do the PPP analysis, right? As far as PPP is considered, Indian per capita income will be a bit more, right? But even then, but the point is that the government is essentially looking at saving cinema, because cinema is very important, and it is a very, very important thing. Right now, the problem with Indian cinema industry is that it's concentrated in the heavy density markets. That the 9,900 cinema halls that these people talked about, majority of them lie in very small clusters, and then there are no cinema halls in places, at all, which is a big problem. But in order to save people, in order to save the cinema industry, what did we discuss is a better thing to do, right? What we discussed was Mr. Bijli, the founder of PVR, the head of PVR Inox, said that you've got to have a three-pronged system of monetizing films, right? The first is cinema, the hall, movie releases in a hall, right? And it has to stay in a hall for a long time, right? And it cannot come to OTT for, earlier the window was nine months for digital rights, for TV rights for a year. Now, right now it's come down to 2 or 3 weeks. So you can't have that. You increase that difference. Like once the movie comes in cinema, at least 3 to 6 months that it doesn't come in OTT. Even when it comes to OTT, right, it has to firstly become as a pay-per-view kind of a product, right? Which Sitare Zameen Par tried, by the way, is trying, right? It's monetizable on YouTube. So you can pay money and watch it on YouTube. So first it has to be a pay-per-view, and that pay-per-view needs to have a particular window, let's say of 3 months. And then after the 9th month or a year, or that's when the movie can be coming as far as the free OTT play is considered. That's how you're gonna monetize movies well. That's how you're gonna save the cinema industry. Barely increasing the number of cinema halls might not be the right thing to do. And who's gonna pay for this, right? PVR cannot. And what are you gonna do? Start government cinema halls? Some comments. Mr. Tarun says civic sense also becomes a problem when operations start in tier 3 cities. Oh yeah, that's that is of course a problem, but that's also very necessary. You've got to have that breadth of the whole penetration is considered. So you've got to have that penetration in tier 3 because it's a chicken and egg problem. There's civic sense problem because there's a lack of community action, or there's a lack of community action because there's civic sense. So it's a chicken, it's an upward spiral, right? Like everything else. So a very good interview you can watch about this whole situation is something by Matt Damon. Matt Damon is a very good writer and actor and producer, right? And he said, when I grew up, I used to love movies like Behind the Candelabra, right? Just two guys, their love story. Two guys, a man and a woman, hopefully. But even if it's not, it's okay. Point is, like a simple story of two people living, right? That used to be cinema for me, right? And I used to love those movies growing up, like a romantic comedy or like a drama and a serious drama, which is not all special effects and so on and so forth, which is not a big project. I used to love those movies. But you know what happened? The DVDs went out of business. And DVDs, when they went out of business, they essentially changed the model, the business model of cinema. Because a DVD was supposed to be a second opening of a movie. So let's say if a movie makes $50 million to make, right? And then you add like 50 million more on P&A, right? It's $100 million movie. Just saying it as an example. That's what he said. And it needs to have a $200 million box office, right? And that isn't possible for a small movie, or let's say a real movie, right? But that wasn't a problem before, because then we used to have like a DVD run 3 to 6 months later, and then used to have a second opening of the movie, which used to give a lot of money back, right? So you used to make a lot of money, or let's say float the boat even with small projects, because there used to be a lot of rerun of that theatrical release. When DVDs went out of the business, all the pressure of making money on movies came down to just cinema collections, right? And you can't draw people for a short movie, for a real understated subtle movie to cinemas in this day and age, right? And that sort of became a problem. And that is the problem with the industry right now. Forget about the DVD run. Right now, there is no cinema run as well. So it's killed the industry in ways that we don't know. So we need to do that. Mr. Bijli is 100% right. But let's move on. Cube Highways is buying Reliance Infra's project, PS Toll project, for 2,000 crores. So Reliance is gonna make like 600 crores in cash, and 1,400 crore is gonna go for debt pairing and other expenses. So Reliance Infra is essentially zero debt now. Good time for Mr. Anil Ambani, but no good times really, right? He's always screwed by the ED guys. So let's happen, but good news coming from one place. Build, operate, transfer model happened with this infrastructure project. Runs a lot of tolls. Good news for Reliance Infra. Moving on. There's a lot of weight loss drugs coming, and it's a warning from medics, because every doctor, even physiotherapists and Ayurvedic practitioners, are writing prescriptions for weight loss drugs, and Instagram and so on and so forth. Those things are leading people to adopt these drugs faster than they should, which is leading to a big problem, right? So we've talked about weight loss drugs, how they have like 1 lakh customers right now, and just 2 years it's gonna be 10 lakh. It seems like they're gonna exceed their expectations there. Very, very weird stuff going on with the weight loss drugs. 1.2 million people. They've already revised their estimate. Earlier it was 1 million. And there's also a problem. Novo Nordisk has asked buyers to be careful because its package got stolen. There was a theft in one of its carriers, some logistics problem. Somebody stole their shipment uh, while it was en route. Now, how many of you believe that it wasn't theft that happened with Novo Nordisk's shipment? How many of you believe it was something other than theft? What do you see? Can you guess what happened with the shipment while it was en route? Can you make that guess? Huh? Of course, right? It wasn't stolen, man. It might have been sold by people who were actually handling the logistics. That happens in India a lot, right? By the way, Chinese imports of jewelry are hurting the local jewelry firms. Someone used it. Mr. Mr. Tarun says somebody used it. No, I didn't mean that. I meant somebody who was driving the truck or the stuff. They actually cut a deal, the illegal deal, and they sold it in black. You can't expect, like, truck drivers are not that fat, right? So, I mean, they don't unfortunately struggle with the problem that is obesity. So they don't need the drug. But yeah, but that's just an assumption. That's just a joke. Don't take it seriously. But yeah, there is a duty on imports from China as far as jewelry are considered. However, those imports have been breached and wrong HSN code marking. So HSN code is basically the code which is used in import and export. Now that code decides how much of tariff and so on and so forth, what kind of duty is that particular item subject to, and so on and so forth. Now they've been marking it wrong, and which is leading to some sort of flux of Chinese jewelry in the Indian market, which is a bit of a problem. So uh, the size of Indian fashion jewelry market is about 40,000 crore as compared to 30,000 crore in FY20, and that is basically hurting. The Chinese imports are hurting that 40,000 crore industry. India has a duty of 600 rupees per kg. As far as the HSN code of fashion jewelry is considered, but they are coming up with different codes, which is leading to some sort of problems. So customs have been informed, and let's see what happens there. This never happens, by the way, without the permission of the custom handlers. So most of the corruption which happens, which is the most profitable corruption, is big in the income tax and customs department, right? Because there's so much of shipment coming in, so much of money pouring in, and all you need to do is some fiddle with some shipments here and there, and you make a lot of money. A friend of mine just became a babu in IT and customs. A very good friend of mine. Guess he's gonna be rich. Moving on. Decriminalize 355 sections. They want to decriminalize 1,355. The decriminalizing 1,000 more things in times to come. The government is really going heavy to make it easy to do business here. Moving on. Beijing loses curbs on foreign capital for some green projects. China is allowing foreign capital for green projects. China is just the king of the green industry. They have solar, they have wind, they have EVs, they have everything as far as the green energy is considered. And China is essentially such a big part that China's solar manufacturing play is bigger than the rest of the world combined. Right? That's how huge China is. But and it's so huge that other countries have to actually like put up duties to protect their industry. So if China decides to, if the world was a free place, there's going to be no other producer of solar energy than China, right? Even wind energy and so on. So even EVs. So that's what's happening. Halt work on H20 chips. Nvidia to supplier. China says they wouldn't want the H20 chips, which is making Nvidia talk to suppliers, Samsung and other players, because H20 is a lower generation play designed specially for China, and China says there's a national security risk as far as H20 which is coming. Trump administration cut a deal where they said 15%, we take 15%, and then you can sell to China these H20 semiconductors, but China says it's not that important, so let's see what happens there. Moving on. US tariff a brief hitch can't stop march on India, says Mr. Chandrababa Naidu, a great leader in my opinion. Moving on. Market snaps 6-day winning. Tariffs about to kick in. But people say that Indian stock markets have already priced in the tariff troubles and that they shouldn't be much of an issue. However, market has actually, snapped. It was growing up, but it's not going down. It's sort of become. It's looks that it's peaked out. So let's see what happens. A lot of it can be profit booking because Indian markets have been doing well for a while, and since they are going to face a fresh round of troubles, and Indian corporates earnings and everything led to some sort of buoyancy. You might be looking at some reversal, but shouldn't be a big deal, right? That's what these people are saying. So let's see what happens there. Just 1 second, folks. Gotta put my laptop on charging. Should have done it earlier, sorry. Yeah, it's good. GST exemption could take a toll on insurers' health. So we talked about how the government was talking about personal insurance going out of the ambit of GST. We talked about that business insurance stays intact at the 18% mark, but the personal insurance, they want to make it exempt of GST. Now insurers are crying foul. They're saying no, please don't do that. Why do you think must insurers be talking about waiving off the GST for personal insurance? Isn't it supposed to be a good news for them? Because the prices are gonna come down and so on and so forth. More people might just get insured. Well, the answer lies in input credits. So once you charge GST from customers, that particular whatever you are spending as far as GST is considered is also gets balanced. But once you've made those expenditures in GST and you don't have the GST coming in from the other end, you cannot balance the input credits, which leads to a problem. That's an interesting perspective. Insurance companies may risk losing customers if they hike policy rates, and if they don't, their margins could take a hit because of input GST credit problem. Well, I am surprised. It's actually makes sense, right? It makes sense that they need to have input credits happening, right? As far as GST is considered. And if GST is just exempted from a large part of their business, they'll be paying GST with nothing to balance it with. So GST credit is tricky to understand, says Mr. Tiwari. It is, but it's also pretty simple, right? So let's say if I'm making a product and I'm charging 18% GST from my customer, I'm also making some purchases, right? To make that product, hopefully. So if I'm making those purchases, I'm also paying GST to those guys, right? Now, the GST I collect here can be balanced with the GST I'm paying here so that it stays. So a lot of GST is essentially balanced, right? However, if I can't take GST here, I'll be paying GST there with nothing to balance it with. So that becomes a problem. I hope it's easier to understand now, right? Very interesting. Moving on. Some deals happening. Yes Bank gets not to reappoint CEO for 6 months. Yes Bank getting Sumitomo as a buyer, and the leadership needs to stay intact. GST Council to meet on September 3 to 4 to decide the 2-slab structure. That's okay. A very big deal is happening. Fed chair Jeremy Powell. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Jeremy Powell is looking at rate cuts. He said that we might just be looking at rate cuts now. We are worried about the job numbers and also the inflation numbers. But if they are okay, we might just be looking at cutting the rates, Fed rates. Now, this is the first time he said that. Now, Trump had asked him to cut rates because he said there is basically no inflation. US had like very little inflation, 2.1%. So he said inflation is in control. A lot of industries are getting, set up in US, lower the rates. And Powell was resisting. He said he's going to look at it non-politically. To which Trump said that he is, I quote, a moron, a stupid person, a slow guy, and so on and so forth. Now he's looking at, after listening to all of those abuses, he's reconsidered his stand. The question is, was Trump right then? Or is now Jeremy Powell yielding to the pressure? Is it politics, or was Trump right and Jeremy Powell, Mr. Powell, is late to realize? A very good question, a high value question. Moving on. Niti Aayog is looking at fiscal SOPs and regulatory streamlining to add homestays. As we've talked about, viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember. There's a lot of action happening as far as the hospitality play is considered, right? Foreign hospitality is overseas players coming to India and so on and so forth. A lot of investments happening in the hotels industry. Indian Hotels Limited, the Tata company, IHCL, and then also ITC, all of them talking about beefing up their hotel supply. Well, that's not scalable, of course. What's scalable is homestays and the disorganized. Right now, there are a lot of SOPs for homestays, but what they're looking at is reducing the bureaucratic hurdle for registration of homestays and for people to avail those SOPs, right? So that is yet another decision in the direction of reducing regulation, and that's what's being proposed by Niti Aayog. Classifying homestays residential units to ensure access to cheaper water and power. Making room. Push needed to make shortfall of 2 lakh hotel rooms. This is yet again something that we discussed. Viewers of Thinkers Frequency would remember. The head of IHCL said that India lacks a lot of rooms. India's rooms density again is 0.92 when China's room density is some 2.5 or something of that. That's what he said. So they say that India has a shortfall of 2 lakh rooms, and homestay market is did a revenue of 4,500 crores. So it has an opportunity to grow much faster if not for the regulations and if it gets some SOPs. Moving on. Yeah. OpenAI is starting an office in India, which is not a big deal. OpenAI is starting an office in India, in Delhi, which means it's not going to be a tech office, right? It's mostly a government licensing play. Once again, India has sort of lost an opportunity to do anything. India could have been much better than just a farm, the data farm for these foreign AI companies, right? India could have actually unleashed its own LLMs and made it more, let's say, attractive for Indians to use it, or let's say by some sort of regulatory action. They could have protected this play because this is the next frontier. So we lost out on the internet battle, right? China has its own YouTube. China has its own internet apps. We don't. India is an internet colony of the West. Essentially, we use what the West uses. This could have been a play where India essentially got its own players, right? But unfortunately, that hasn't happened, and that won't happen because OpenAI and Gemini and all of these players are deeply entrenched in the Indian territory now. Another bus being missed, or has been missed already, which is very sad for the country because AI is everything, and whoever wins this will win everything, right? Unfortunately, India is not going to be that player. Moving on, TikTok, by the way, restarted its website. Right? Did you notice? That's a big news that TikTok might be back in India. So the government has come out said we have not allowed TikTok back. We have not, allowed it back. It's just the website is on. But is it a signal? Why would TikTok switch on its website all of a sudden, right? Is it an indication of something that can be happening because of Indian and Chinese ties getting warmer? If TikTok is allowed, you know what's going to happen? ShareChat is going to get screwed. So ShareChat is one of the most interesting startup stories from India. It's just extraordinarily interesting. ShareChat is a company which began as something like a bank of WhatsApp forwards. Uh, Mr. Tarun says bans are going to be removed. Oh, you're sure of that? Well, if India allows TikTok, that's going to be huge, man. That's going to change everything. Anyway, so ShareChat began, right? It was going well. It raised a lot of money for being a vernacular social network. Even though it was not really a social network, people use ShareChat for forwarding WhatsApp messages like good morning, good evening. Those kind of messages, people got them for ShareChat. And so it ended up raising a lot of money. It was valued at 400 million and so on and so forth. So that was weird. And then, what happened was that TikTok came to India. And as TikTok came to India, ShareChat just got demolished, right? Because TikTok was such a viral product that it went absolutely bazooka in the market. In fact, at TikTok, Instagram started going down, right? Facebook, Instagram started going down as far as TikTok is considered. TikTok was so extraordinarily viral, right? The product. Now, ShareChat started dying down as soon as TikTok went up, and ShareChat essentially was going to get acqui-hired by TikTok India team. That was written on the wall. But then what happened was 2020 Galwan War happened. Okay, Galwan War happened. The US India China Galwan War. As soon as that happened, TikTok got banned in India. Right? As TikTok got banned in India, ShareChat essentially, got a free reign. So ShareChat started attracting a lot of money in India. Got a lot of investment. It raised like $2 billion in net. 2 billion is like 16,000 crore rupees, and $2 billion with that, ShareChat got valued at like $5 billion. Okay, when Facebook at the same time in India, the whole Meta business was valued at 6 billion. So ShareChat, which had revenues of less than of like 100 crores, $12 million revenue with a $450 million loss. So they had a loss of about $500 million in a year. With that financial performance, ShareChat got valued at $5 billion, when Facebook, which did $2 billion in revenue profitably, got valued at $6 billion, right? So that was the bubble that was ShareChat. Okay, now those founders, they just went out of the company. They cashed out. There were reports that that founder used to talk in offsites that, hey, my job is to get like 20 crores and then I'm out. And then he got more than 20 crores. He got probably like about 200 crores, right, in exit. And two founders just didn't return to work. They just went out, chilled, right? And then ShareChat got into the whole, pimping business with this uh, whole thing, right? The live streaming thing, the cheap kind of play. And now if TikTok comes back at this particular play, as Mr. Tarun is suggesting, and all as is the insinuation, ShareChat is instantly going to die, and its IPO is going to fail like nothing else, right? It's going to lose the social networking play like nothing else. So, quite a ride, right? Which reminds us of that Woody Allen quote. That's FU money, says Mr. Tiwari. Right, yeah. Those people, they really made a lot of money and they just left, right? They just left. And it was pretty interesting. Which is like the talk about luck, right? What Mr. Woody Allen said. Woody Allen, sir, the man who said, I'd rather be lucky than good, saw deeply into life. People are afraid to admit what great a part of life is dependent on luck. They're often afraid to admit how much of life is not in one's control. It's like that tennis match where sometimes the ball hits the top of the net and with a little luck it goes forwards and you win. And maybe it doesn't and you lose. Match point. So that's that. And with that, we come to the end of the 90th episode of Thinker's Frequency, our daily mental workout, our daily dose of insights and analysis which don't lead to paralysis right before we punch in. It's 9:18. We're gonna punch in anytime soon. We got late because we had to discuss a few things in the beginning. But I hope you had fun. I hope you had, this added some value to you. I had a lot of fun. And I need to thank Mr. Patil, Mr. Tarun, Mr. Tiwari, Mr. Raj, and everybody else who watched. Mr. Prajapati on LinkedIn, and everybody else who watched. Thank you so much for joining. I wish you a beautiful day personally and professionally. And I hope to see you. Oh, yeah, speaking of seeing you, same place, same time. When should we do it in the evening? Should we do it at 6 p.m.? Or should we do it? Thank you. This was a great episode, says Miss Aditi. Thank you so much. When should we do it, folks? Tomorrow? 8. Can't do it at 8 a.m., of course, as usual. We could do it at 6 p.m. We could do it at 4 p.m. 9 p.m. Okay. So let's do it at 9 p.m. Can I have more votes on 9 p.m., please? 9 p.m. says Mr. Tarun. Prime time. Tomorrow we're going to go prime time, buddy. I'm going to be competing with Arnav Goswami, sir. How's that? More votes on 9, please. If everybody agrees, we're going to go. Nine. Nation wants to know. Perfect. So we'll see you tomorrow at 9 p.m. And we will be there. See you. Bye-bye. Take care. Have a beautiful day, folks. Thank you so much for joining.